You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
You're listening to the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres Edition, your source for all news, press conference reactions, analysis, and objective discussions regarding the NHL's Buffalo Sabres from right here in the Niagara region. Here are your hosts, Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad.
Hello, Sabres fans. Welcome back to the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres Edition right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your October 14th, 2020 edition, your source of North American sports coverage by sports fans for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the beautiful Niagara region. Find us on social media for updates, giveaways, and sponsor promo codes each month by following us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. You can listen to us on our main platform, which is Spreaker.com, and the free Spreaker app by searching the Armchair GMs. As well, we're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Deezer by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. Lastly, check out our beautiful user-friendly website, armchairgmsports.com, for all things regarding our network, including articles, podcast episodes, sponsors, and contributors. Everything's on there for you guys. Please smash that subscribe button and give us a like on whatever platform you're listening to us. Give us a share and give us some love if you enjoy the Sabres content on this network. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres Edition, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Capoots13 with a Canadian Z. I'm always very pleased to be joined on the Sabres portion of the network by my friend and co-host. He is Austin Broad. You can follow him on Twitter at Austin_BroadTCB. He is a contributing writer for the ChargingBuffalo.net. Austin, we were talking about the Sabres going into the offseason, what they needed to do in the draft and free agency, and I think they have shocked most of the Sabres nation here and basically most of the hockey universe by some of the moves that they have made, and you know what? This might be one of the more optimistic Sabres episodes that we've ever had the pleasure of doing.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice, right? I mean, we've been talking about, doom and gloom, or, they have to do this, they have to do that, but I'm not sure what they're going to be able to do. And the news over the past, week and a half, it started out rough on draft night, but then it got better as the draft went along. And then obviously the first day or so of free agency was pretty bleak. And then all of a sudden Sunday, the biggest bomb of them all, got everyone all fired up for, a potential, I don't want to say, optimistic season, but I mean, it's hard to not be optimistic when you make the big signing of Taylor Hall.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, yeah, this is probably going to be one of the better episodes in terms of our moods that we've had since we started this podcast.
Absolutely. And speaking of this podcast, guys, we are going to be transitioning over to a beautiful video version on YouTube. It will still be available on all audio platforms after it is posted, but we will be switching over to video with a nice layout, and so you guys can see our glorious, beautiful faces that you can see on Wednesday nights as well on Ice Dogs Extra on your TV. So trying to get more video content for you guys. So hopefully in the next episode or two, we will be able to have a video version of this podcast up and going for you guys, and continuing to grow as a podcast and as a network here. But with that being said, Sabres fans, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the draft that the Sabres had, that kind of quickly touch on the draft picks that they were able to bring into the organization here. We're going to talk about, obviously, free agency, and just our thoughts on the construction of the lineup and what the possible lineup's going to look like. Also, a little bit of what the projected cap space looks like for the Buffalo Sabres, and kind of what else they could possibly do here with just under $14 million projected in cap space. Again, we don't exactly know when the season's going to start. There's a lot of speculation with that, but going to have a lot to talk about in today's episode. So with that being said, guys, we're going to take our quick first commercial break, and we're going to come back and discuss the draftees and the newest players acquired by the Buffalo Sabres in the 2020 NHL entry draft. So stay here, and we'll be right back here on the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving traditional style Italian pizzas made with the freshest top quality ingredients. Loaded subs and their famous chicken wings. Winners of the Reader's Choice Diamond Award 4 years running from Niagara this week for best pizza and wings in Niagara Falls. Home of the best tray and wing combo in town for the price and quality. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery at 905-374-4400. Make sure to like them on Facebook and view their website for their menu at carmine'spizzeria.ca. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Way too good. As we all adjust to this new world that we're living in today, masks are now mandatory. And Niagara's own Custom PPE is Canada's leading face mask provider. Visit them online at customppe.ca and choose between several mask options with different colors and sizes. Add your organization, company, or team logo so you make your face masks unique. Available to purchase online 24/7 at customppe.ca and shipped within 1 week. They have the best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, and no order is too big or too small. Also offering custom floor stickers as well as face and counter shields for your business or workplace. Visit customppe.ca and use the code ARMCHAIR at checkout for 20% off your custom or blank face mask today. Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider. Attention job seekers, if you are currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls, directly across from the Camisos Plaza. Their free services include resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and all their services are currently provided by appointment only. So give them a call at 905-358-0021 or visit their website at ehc.on.ca, the Niagara Employment Help Center. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Welcome back, Sabres fans, ladies and gentlemen, to the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad back with you here. And Austin, it's about that time. I'm really fired up to get into this first segment, talking about the Sabres draftees in the 2020 NHL Draft. This segment today is brought to you by Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, home of the best pizza and wing combos in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Call today, 905-374-4400 and carmine'spizzeria.ca. This month's promo code is Armchair Mushroom for 10% off your entire order for call ahead pickup or delivery. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, way too good. So Austin, night one of the NHL Draft, and the Sabres picked at number 8. And we had an interesting pick there. There were some really nice forwards there at the time. I know Kyle and myself did a full 3 hours worth of round 1 draft coverage. That was interesting. And once the Sabres were up, I was pretty stoked about possibly the additions of Marco Rossi and or Cole Perfetti to the Sabres lineup. They instead went with Marco Rossi's line mate from the Ottawa 67's, Jack Quinn. Austin, what were your initial thoughts of this? And then after you were able to process it a little bit, did your thoughts kind of change on this draft pick of Jack Quinn, 8th overall by the Buffalo Sabres?
Yeah, so obviously my initial thoughts were when Marco Rossi was on the board, hopefully the Sabres go after, him. In our draft guide at the Charging Buffalo, we had Rossi ranked 4th. I know I had him in my personal rankings at 3. But I think literally half hour after the pick was made, I was over it and I started to think about Jack Quinn and the season that he had. You and I getting to cover the Ice Dogs, we were able to see the 67s live a few times. Got to see Jack Quinn a lot. I know with my work with the Mississauga Steelheads 2 years ago, I also was literally in charge of tracking the 67, so I got to see Quinn a lot for 2 whole years. After I thought about it, let the initial disappointment pass, I thought it was a pretty solid pick. I mean, Jack Quinn was very good. He scored 52 goals, had 89 points. That common myth that he was only good because of Marco Rossi, is not true. I've already begun tracking a few 67s games from this year, and I'm through 2 games, and he actually has had 0 shifts with Rossi in those 2 games at 5-on-5. So, I mean, once you get through, the initial shock that it wasn't Marco Rossi and you start to think about it, is he going to be better than Rossi? I still don't think so, but Jack Quinn is no slouch, and he does one thing that the Sabres need, and that's put the puck in the back of the net.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the one thing that we've talked about on this podcast and with this team for how many years is that how long have we tried to find somebody to put the puck in the net if they're playing with playmakers like Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, or even Ryan O'Reilly back in a few years ago. It just seems like they're never able to find guys that can just consistently put the pucks into the net, and instead we're left with guys like Evan Rodriguez who have all the speed in the world and can't hit the wide side of a barn. So it's nice that for the first draft pick for Kevin Adams was Jack Quinn, a proven goal scorer, again, like you mentioned, 52 goals, and playing on a very good Ottawa 67s team. Would you have liked to have Marco Rossi? Absolutely, but I can't fault the Sabres for going in a direction of something that they desperately needed in a goal scorer like Jack Quinn, and with the moves that the Sabres have made, which we'll get into in free agency, it seems like Jack Quinn, you can really start to picture Jack Quinn fitting in this lineup very nicely in the next year or two in that top 6.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a right winger who, he's a couple games I've tracked him at, he's played a little bit of center and wing, but he's mostly a winger. So where do the Sabres have spots in their top 6 for wingers? When you watch him play, he gets to the slot. He has a very lethal shot. He's very, very smart at using either his body or his brain to find those soft spots in the defense to get open for a shot, but he's also very capable of taking the puck himself and driving play on his own. I think if you're in the top 6 with the Sabres, he probably isn't going to have to worry about driving play all on his own, because in the future, I assume it'll be Jack Eichel and Dylan Cousins as the top 2 centers if Cousins pans out, and those 2 are very good at driving play. So it even takes another burden off Jack Quinn. I mean, he only had, I think, 34 of his 52 goals were at 5-on-5. He had 3 shorthanded goals, I believe. So he's very good at putting the puck in the net when they don't have to rely on a power play. Would you have liked Marco Rossi? Yes. Really, Rossi was the only player there that I wanted. Like, Perfetti would have been nice, but I don't really think Perfetti versus Quinn is that big of a discrepancy. I think Quinn could end up being just as good as Cole Perfetti. So, I talked to a bunch of people, and it was all the same thing. It was like, why didn't they pick Rossi? Why didn't they pick Rossi? And I pretty much spent the rest of the night talking people off that ledge. Like, I wanted Rossi too, but I have had the privilege of seeing Quinn live for 2 years. He is no slouch. He's going to fit in very beautifully. And, he's a 19-year-old kid, depending on what happens with the OHL. I mean, maybe we'll see a loophole in this year where 19-year-olds can play in the AHL if they have nowhere to go in junior, because who knows what's going to happen. But it'll be very interesting to see what they do with him this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is playing in the Sabres lineup as early as 2021, 2022.
Definitely a guy that skyrocketed this year up through the ranks of the OHL. Obviously playing on a great Ottawa 67s team and having a teammate like Marco Rossi is going to help, but definitely improved his draft stock going into this year. And again, a 6-foot winger, 176 pounds. But I really like that. Again, the Sabres have drafted smaller forwards in the past and haven't really panned out. Obviously, the number one example of that is Casey Middlestat. He still hasn't really panned out as a consistent NHL forward for the Sabres, especially where he was taken at 8th overall as well. So I don't disagree with going away from the Rossi or Perfetti, the smaller guys, and going with Jack Quinn, who's a 6-foot winger. And again, a guy that we covered this year, covering the Ice Dogs and the Peterborough Petes, is Cameron Butler, a guy that has an elite level shot. And again, he can put the puck in the back of the net. It's not going to drive play. But I think Jack Quinn is exactly what what we're expecting from a guy like that as well. He's a guy that, like you mentioned, doesn't have to drive the play, but he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to put the puck in the net. 52 goals is nothing to joke about, and he might be a perfect fit for the Sabres lineup, like you mentioned, in 2021, 2022. Just guys like him and Cam Butler, a guy that you and I had both wanted for the Sabres to draft late in the draft if he was available. He went undrafted, but I feel like Jack Quinn and him have a lot of similarities. Just the fact that they have a high-end, elite-level shot already for the OHL level.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And the interesting thing to note is, obviously, a 40-goal improvement, which is just impressive no matter what way you look at it. Like, it doesn't matter what circumstances led to it. He had a 40-goal improvement. Like, that's outstanding. And the thing that I really liked, and the thing that I don't think people are paying enough attention to, is that Rossi only assisted, I believe, on 14 of his goals. And all 14 of those goals, I am not 100% certain, but were all the power play goals. Like, I don't believe Rossi assisted on one of Jack Quinn's 5v5 goals. So Rossi helped a lot, but Jack Quinn did a lot of his 5-on-5 production, not on his own, but away from Marco Rossi, which might, ease the pain of Sabres fans. It wasn't just the Marco Rossi show is what made Jack Quinn a good player. Jack Quinn is a good player in his own right as well.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting to note there. As on the surface, it would look the opposite, that Rossi was driving Quinn's point total, but when you really look into it, it really wasn't as big of a factor as people may have thought. Going on to the rest of the draftees here, Austin, in the second round, the Sabres took John Jason Peterka, a right winger from Germany. In the fifth round, they took Matteo Constantini, a center from the Buffalo Junior Sabres. And then with their two seventh-round picks, again, seventh-round picks are what they are, Albert Lykasen from Sweden Junior and Jacob Konechny, a center from the Czech Junior. So obviously we're not going to know a whole lot about the fifth and seventh round picks, but what do you like about John Jason Peterka, another right winger from Germany here, taking two right wingers with the first and second round picks for the Sabres?
Yeah, so I really like JJ Peterka. I mean, he was playing in Munich last year for the DEL. He had 11 points in 42 games. Pretty impressive for a 17-year-old kid playing in professional hockey over in Germany. His rights were drafted by the London Knights. I mean, it could be, if the OHL does end up going through and Peterka does come over, it could be a lot of fun to watch this kid play under the Hunter system. But the thing I like about Peterka is, much like Jack Quinn, he has a nose for scoring goals. The Sabres identified that they needed scoring on the wings, and they went out and drafted two guys with their first two picks that can score from the wing. They traded up to get Peterka. I know some people have a split opinion on that, but when you like a guy, you make sure you go get that guy. I mean, they sacrificed a 100th overall pick to do it, but I really like that selection in Peterka. He was outstanding for Germany at the World Juniors. Him, Stützle, and Reichel ended up playing on a line together, all three draft eligible, and they were a big reason why Germany was pretty successful this year. He's a very good hockey player. He's doing really well right now in the Austrian Hockey League. He's got 6 points in his first 4 games. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the OHL, like I said. So if he does get to come over to North America, it'll be good for you and I, because we'll get to see him a lot up close and personal. But I really like that pick. We had him, I believe, at 24th at the Charging Buffalo, so he was a first-round talent. Getting him at 34 is pretty solid value for Kevin Adams, I believe.
The Sabres actually traded up with the San Jose Sharks to go up and get John Jason Peterka, so did you like that move, the Sabres jumping up there? I believe they had 38. They jumped up to 34 to take him. Did you like that move?
Oh, yeah, I love that move. Like I said, when you think you got your guy, you make sure you go and get him. I mean, if you want to do hindsight, I mean, you couldn't tell what was going to happen with that 100th overall pick, the fourth rounder that the Sabres threw in there to get up to 34. But I mean, the Sharks made a nice pick with Carter Savoie. But when you like your guy and you have a guy that you want on your team, you have to make sure that you go and get him. Kevin Adams believed that JJ Peterka was the guy. So I have no issue with them trading up to go and get it. I mean, the draft is a crapshoot. I know everyone says you want your lottery tickets, but when you can get a first-round talent at 34, I think it's totally worth the trade.
And of course he's a London Knight property, because who isn't a London Knight property that's a high elite player? But that's a discussion for another day. But with that being said, Austin, anything else you want to just quickly mention on the other three players? Again, 5th to 7th round picks. They're going to be a lot of unknown with those guys if they ever even end up making the NHL. But just if you have any quick thoughts on any of those guys, Constantini, Lycasen, or Konechny.
5th round pick Matteo Constantini. He's actually got a really nice developmental path coming up for him. He's going over. Well, he's already over there. He's playing in the BCHL. Probably the premier Tier 2 Junior A program in Canada. He's playing for the Penticton Vees, and he's also committed to the University of North Dakota. So his next 2 to 3 years, he's going to be in some solid programs. So it could be interesting to watch him develop, because he'll be in 2 elite programs that are pretty known for developing some pretty solid talent. So he could be one to watch. You never know. He could be a diamond in the rough for the Sabres. I don't know much about the other 2 right now. I've been in the process of looking into them, but they haven't really been ranked on most rankings that I've seen. So right now I'm still doing my research on the other 2.
And lastly, what I want to mention to you listeners out there and to Austin is just going through the Sabres draft picks over the years, obviously prepping for this show with looking at their draft picks. It just seems like over the years, the Sabres have done a very poor job at not only scouting talent, but also developing talent into NHL quality players. It just seems like over the years, I'm going back, even back to the years 2008, 2009, starting with 2010 Mark Pysyk, and other than that, he was the only guy that ever made an NHL roster or played NHL games. And when you go through what they've done from 2010 to now, it's no shock that they are in the position that they're in, just because of the fact that A, they haven't developed the players that they have drafted, and B, they just have done a very poor job at acquiring players that and scouting players that are going to be good enough to make NHL rosters. I don't think it's a coincidence that most years they have maybe 2 or 3 max of entire draft picks from the entire draft that end up being successful or having an NHL career.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, the 2009 draft was the last time that, they have 3 players that have played 400 plus games. That's pretty impressive, but, not one of those players from 2009 is still in the Sabres system. The 2012 draft, they still have Girgensons, McCabe, and Allmark. That's about it. 2013 draft, Rasmus Ristolainen. Nobody else has really been a regular for the Sabres. They're all on other teams. 2014, Sam Reinhart and Victor Olofsson is finally here. 2015, Jack Eichel. That's it, which is very bad because the Sabres had a decent amount of picks that year. 2016, absolutely atrocious. Asplund has played 29 games. Maybe he could turn into something, but no one else from that class will turn into anything. Maybe Casey Fitzgerald. I'm very optimistic for Botterill's 2017 class. I think there's, three players, maybe 4 if you still haven't given up on Middlestat, that could be something there. Botterill had some drafts that could end up working out. I do like some of the talent there, but yeah, I mean, it's the drafting and the developing has just been atrocious. And like you said, that is a big reason why the Sabres are where they're at right now.
Yeah, and the draft with Alex Nylander, that was one of the worst drafts. That was the year the Sabres hosted the NHL draft in 2016, so that makes that look even worse in that aspect. But again, there are some bright spots coming up, like you mentioned, the last couple of years. You've got Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, your franchise goaltender, hopefully in the future coming up. Scary Laxton has signed his entry-level deal. So those were 2 guys that were drafted in the Middlestat draft in 2017. 2018, like you mentioned, we've had the pleasure of talking with Matej Pekar as he plays for the Sudbury Wolves and formerly the Barrie Colts. So we've talked to him on our show before. 4th round pick in 2018. He could be a nice pick for the Sabres. But again, it just seems like over the years, we'll have to see, but the previous regimes before Kevin Adams have really given Sabres fans and the people around the hockey universe just a sour taste on how the Sabres have been able to draft and develop players over the last, seems like, 3 regimes.
Yeah, like I said, it's the Botterill's drafting. It's a little bit too early to, I mean, he's missed on, aside from Dahlin, like Middlestat looks like a miss right now. We'll see. Like you mentioned, Laxton and Luukkonen. Bryson is a very nice player. I think, one more year in Rochester and then he'll be up. 2018 draft, like you said, Pekar. Samuelson just signed his entry-level deal. He'll be with Rochester. And I really liked the 2019 draft. I really liked Dylan Cousins and Eric Portillo, who maybe it's a little bit recency bias, but I think at this point I'm just as high on Eric Portillo as I am on Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I think those are two really solid goaltending prospects. So we'll see how Botterill's drafting shapes up in the next 2 to 3 years. But yeah, the Murray drafting era was extremely bad, especially for someone who was highly touted as a scout. And that 2014 draft and that 2015 draft, those are two big reasons why the Sabres are just not really good in terms of prospects. I mean, you're on pace for 3 players out of 2 draft classes to beat regular NHLers. Brendan Lemieux, you can count him, but he does not play for the Sabres, so I'm not counting him at all.
Yeah, and it's tough to be able to consistently win in this league when you don't draft well and you're not able to develop prospects, and that's something the Sabres have done a very poor job of in recent memory. So hopefully with the new Kevin Adams regime here and the new coaching staff down in Rochester, we'll see if they can turn things around for some of these guys. But Jack Quinn, the new prize possession for the Buffalo Sabres, 8th overall from the Ottawa 67s, as well as a couple other nice players. We'll have to, the jury's obviously going to be out on them for a while, but definitely once you get through the surface area of playing with Marco Rossi or playing on a team with Marco Rossi, Jack Quinn seems like he is a very nice draft pick and will fit in very nicely with the Sabres' needs going forward in the top 6 in the next couple years. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our last commercial break on the show today. And we're going to come back and discuss the news that we've been fired up to talk about, the free agency for the Buffalo Sabres and the big acquisition of Taylor Hall and just what that means for this team going forward, and some key quotes from Taylor Hall's introductory media press conference. So we'll stay right here, and we'll be right back here on the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network.
J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity. Offering a unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team, they connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring.
The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in May of 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently providing a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where drinks and live music come together to make a perfect evening. For more than 15 years, they have provided not only for their dedicated locals, but their customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and great live entertainment. Open daily 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. for dinner and till 2 a.m. for drinks. Check out their new menu and book reservations on their website at Spicy Olive Bar and Grill, it's with an E at the end, .com, or call 905-371-2323 for reservations as well. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Welcome back, Sabres fans, ladies and gentlemen, to the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad back with you here to have one of, I'm looking forward to this segment probably more than any other segment that we've ever done on the show in the year that we have done this podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Really fired up to talk about this free agent frenzy for the Buffalo Sabres. This segment today is brought to you by J&O Flooring, and Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. Simplified processes and making homes beautiful are their specialty. 905-358-3299 or jnoflooring.com to start today. Shout out to Jack. He's a big Sabres fan, so he's going to love that we're giving him a shout out right here before we talk about the Sabres free agent acquisitions here. And Austin, before we get to the good stuff here, let's just kind of start off by how the mood was on Sabres Twitter and just with the Sabres fan base on how free agency started with the first day of free agency. Did not start off too hot for the Sabres. They signed two depth defensemen, Brandon Davidson and Matt Irwin, to 1 year, $700,000 contracts, and after that happened, I mean, you were on Twitter, you were, going at it with some Sabres, I guess you can call them quote-unquote fans, people that don't really understand what is going on with free agency, and it just did not start off on a good foot for the Sabres as far as the fan base goes, and as far as just, some big moves, obviously, did not come for the first little bit. I was on talking for 3 hours on our free agency coverage about the Sabres, and there really was not a whole lot going on. So what were your thoughts on how the day started for the Sabres and just kind of how it ended up progressing throughout the next couple of days?
Yeah, so free agency was a little bit different this year. I mean, this was the year that the league decided to abolish that legal tampering period. So kind of, teams really actually didn't have a chance to talk to free agents until free agency opened. So you didn't see that rush of signings right at noon as soon as the league year opened. So I kind of was expecting it to be a little bit slow. Not as slow as it ended up being for the league as a whole, really, but especially for the Sabres. And then, the Toby Reeder, the Matt Irwin, and the Brandon Davidson signings came in and, all three of them 1 year, $700K league minimum deals. I mean, not bad deals, but they're also deals that people were complaining about, saying this is your fix. But I looked at those deals as similar to the Curtis Lazzaro signing last year. 1 year deal, league close to the league minimum. I said these, especially the two defensemen, Brandon, maybe not Matt Irwin. Matt Irwin might be your seventh defenseman because he's a veteran and he's 32 years old. But Brandon Davidson has been a very successful AHL defenseman through his entire career. He's had some NHL here and there, but he was basically Zach Redmond 2.0 to me. He's going to be that veteran guy down in Rochester to help with, the Jacob Brysons, the Casey Fitzgeralds and all that. But he also provides a nice little boost where if you need to call a guy up, you have a guy there. So, I mean, I get the doom. It was all doom and gloom. I mean, Adams didn't draft Rossi, so Sabres fans were upset. The first day of free agency was very underwhelming, so Sabres fans were upset. Day two got a little, well, depending on who you ask, it got a little bit better. They signed Cody Eakin, and that literally tore the Sabres community apart. Half of them, I had people told me that I was going to hate that signing in a year, and I was like, 2 years, $2.25 million. I didn't care. But yeah, I mean, there was no impactful move made by Adams on the first 2 days, and we didn't really understand why. I mean, let's face it, it wasn't until Sunday night when the big news broke that we understood why there was no meaningful moves made by Adams on the first 2 days. But I don't think anyone genuinely thought that was a realistic possibility. So I understand the doom and gloom. I was getting pretty frustrated too. I was like, man, there's Eric Halva, Tyler Toffoli, Alex Wenberg. Like, there's a bunch of guys out there the Sabres should have been targeting. Not any of them were targeted. And I couldn't, for the life of you, tell you why. I started to get pretty depressed. Not gonna lie, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, before the Taylor Hall news broke. Cody Eakin, I actually do not mind that signing. He's your third line center. If you surround him with good players, that's fine. But once the news Sunday broke, let's face it, I said maybe we should delete our bad Kevin Adams tweets, and people were like, no, like, this doesn't absolve him. I was like, first of all, it's Twitter. I'm kidding around. Let me joke. Second of all, Kevin Adams just landed the premier free agent on the market, aside from Alex Pietrangelo, but he landed the premier free agent forward.
Absolutely.
Let's give the dude some credit.
And there was also some other stuff going on. They didn't tender Dominic Cahoon, who we were both high on coming over from Pittsburgh last year. Didn't really think that he got the opportunity to be successful with proper playing time. He was not tendered. They brought back Zemgus Girgensons on a multi-year contract. So Big Z back in Buffalo. Johan Larsson left. When you knew Girgensons was re-signing, you basically knew that Johan Larsson was going to go elsewhere. He goes to the Arizona Coyotes on a 2-year deal at 1.4, so good for Larson, but the Sabres didn't need another one of him, a 1-2 punch with him and Girgensons once again. I really like the Cody Eakin signing again. when it first happened, when it first broke, I was pumped about this because this guy, through his whole career, he's 29 years old now, he has been a very solid center that can go up and down your lineup. He's played on some very good teams in Winnipeg and Vegas and even Dallas when he first started out. A very hard player to play against and a guy that you'd love to have on your third line. Only making $2.25 for 2 years. I really don't understand why people were complaining about this signing. I think he brings a lot of experience to the Sabres and really is a nice, solid third line center that they've even had a problem with trying to elevate fourth line centers to play third line or wingers to play third line center. You have a stable guy there who is a bona fide, legit third line center in the NHL.
Yeah, like I said, I had no issue with the signing at all. Like, it didn't bother me at all. I mean, I guess if you look at it, it's hard to say. Like, he's 2 years away from scoring. He's 2 years removed from scoring 20 goals. Are his offensive numbers going to blow you away? No. Is his defensive impact as good as Johan Larsson's? No. But when you look at Cody Eakin, he's proven he can score when you put good players around him. He's going to be your third line center. When you look at the other additions that they made and the players that they have on their lineup, you can surround your top nine now with three legitimate centers and some very quality winger play. The Dominic Cahoon thing, I kind of started to get the sense that, well, first of all, we already kind of talked about it before. We're not sure Ralph is very high on him, so it kind of makes sense. And then once the Tage Thompson deal was announced, 3 years at $1.4 million, to me it was pretty evident that that's Dominic Cahoon. Like, that's Dominic Cahoon right there, your third line scoring winger. They gave Tage a multi-year deal. He's very clearly going to be on the NHL roster next year. Curtis Lazzaro was signed to be your fourth line center. That kind of proved that Larsson was gone. So, I mean, I do like Dominic Cahoon. I think he's a very good player. He hasn't signed as of yet. But, I didn't think the overreaction for Dominic Cahoon was also appropriate by Sabres Twitter. I mean, let's face it. He played 6 games for us. He had 4 points. He looked very solid. When you look at the Tage Thompson contract and just the fact that it was pretty obvious from day one that Ralph wasn't super high on him, it wasn't nearly as shocking to me. I mean, I was upset about that for like 10 minutes, and then I was like, whatever. He's a third line winger. Let's worry about fixing the actual top 6 first, and then I'll start to complain about the bottom 6.
Absolutely. And then obviously they had a few key, I wouldn't say key, but they had some subtractions. Jimmy Vesey and Wayne Simmons both signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs, the rival of the Buffalo Sabres, so good luck with that. I liked Simmons, what he brought to the Sabres, but it just seemed like he wanted to go home to Toronto, and Toronto desperately coveted a player like Wayne Simmons that they did not have in their lineup. I would have liked to bring him back, but just the way that obviously the draft and free agency played out for the Sabres, there just really wasn't going to be a spot for him at this time, but I really liked what Wayne Simmons brought to the Sabres, but again, he goes to the Leafs, goes home to Scarborough, I guess you could say, and signs with the Leafs, so we'll be playing against Wayne Simmons a few times this year, and Jimmy Vesey signs for $900,000, just really did not work out with the Buffalo Sabres like we had envisioned, and his stock continues to fall from somebody who was so highly coveted coming out of university in the NCAA and just hasn't lived up to those expectations. And then lastly, Brandon Montour re-signs on a 1-year RFA deal with the Buffalo Sabres at $3.8. So what are your thoughts on them bringing Montour back and, basically rounding out this top 6, which is looking pretty decent for the Sabres, and bringing Montour back? You can use him as a trade piece, but he's also a very solid defenseman that can be used up and down the D pairs. And I think Ralph's got a very nice top 6 to work with in Buffalo, and Montour comes back on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, the Montour deal, the fact that it was only a 1-year deal signifies to me that they're bringing him back, but I think there's very still much trying to find a market for him. I do like the top 6. I don't hate it. I do think it can be improved. I do think there is a guy like Will Borgen down in Rochester who is ready to make the jump to the NHL. So it's a little disappointing that there's no room for him right now. But, I think they have this defensive talent. I think they can still try and use that defensive talent to acquire maybe an upgrading goal. I don't know. It's very clear that they like Rasmus Dahlin, or obviously, why wouldn't you? They like Rasmus Ristolainen. That's a little bit up for debate. Colin Miller's still here, which I hope he gets a fair shake next year. But the thing with the defensemen is Montour, McCabe, they're both UFAs next year, so that's maybe Borgen has to wait one more year, but I don't know. I like the top 6, but I think Borgen's ready to make the leap to the NHL, and I think he's a cheap entry-level contract that can provide some value, and that's what it's going to take for the Sabres to start being good, is getting some very good players like Borgen on entry level is making impacts. So I don't think they're done with their D yet, but who knows? If they go into the season with this top 6, we've seen it play last year. It's good, not great.
Mm-hmm. And let's end off the show here, Austin, with the big move that everybody wants to talk about. I'm still shocked. I'm still waiting for somebody to wake me up and figure out that this actually happened. But Taylor Hall is a Buffalo Sabre, and I still am having trouble saying that. I cannot believe that I'm saying that. And this segment today is brought to you by Niagara Employment Help Center, helping job seekers find work with their free services and counseling professionals. 6100 Throwstone Road, Niagara Falls, across from McMesos Plaza. Book your appointment today, 905-358-0021 or ehc.on.ca if you're in search of work during this time. So, Austin, Taylor Hall, I was joking about it with my friends throughout the offseason, saying, Taylor Hall is going to come to Buffalo in the quote-unquote hockey heaven that I always love to throw around as a joke when Ted Black said that in his introductory press conference about how Buffalo was going to become hockey heaven. That obviously did not come to fruition, and Ted Black's been long gone, but I still like to use that phrase once in a while when I'm joking around with friends, because it has been the exact opposite of what Buffalo has been for players and just their stigma of what the team is around the league. And by bringing in a guy like Taylor Hall, this isn't just a signing, Austin. To me, this is trying to flip the page and get past the perception of Buffalo and the Sabres not wanting to be a place where players want to play.
Yeah, the closest thing to the Sabres landing the premier free agent forward on the market would have been Kyle Oposo, but even that year was the worst free agent year in recent NHL history with those contracts given out. So, yeah, when Darren Dreger said on the first day of free agency that the Sabres are one of the teams talking to Taylor Hall, everyone was just like, yeah, okay. What team wouldn't try and talk to Taylor Hall? And then, as the rumors kept coming out, it looks like it's potentially Boston, or it's down to Boston and Nashville. Everyone was just like, okay, Taylor Hall needs to sign so the Sabres can start swooping in on guys like Granlund, Toffoli, Hoffman. And then all of a sudden, Sunday night, the news broke that, Friedman said rumblings that Taylor Hall is going to Buffalo on a short-term deal. And I was like, what?
The internet
is this a fake account? I was like, this is a fake account? What's going on here? And then, the news came out that it was a one-year deal for $8 million to the Sabres. And I was, to say I was shocked would be a severe understatement. Not in a million years did I imagine that happening. He's a former MVP. He's a former first overall pick. He's probably top 30 player in the NHL when he's healthy. He's easily a top 30 player in the NHL when he's healthy. And now, not only did you sign him, but you got him here, and he said the potential is there for a long-term relationship if everything goes well. But you've also scored some major victory points with your franchise player in Jack Eichel saying, look, we are willing to spend money to make sure the team is good around you. We are willing to build a winner here around you. So credit to Kevin Adams in his first free agency. I know the first couple of days were rough, and I don't blame Sabres Twitter for being mad, but that's because we never would have imagined that Taylor Hall ended up signing in Buffalo. So
no.
Good for Adams and Kruger and this regime, because it's going to be fun to watch Hall play with Eichel next year.
And you would have thought that, they said going into it, Hall was talking to 10 teams. You probably would have put Buffalo at number 10 on that list of teams that he was most likely talking to.
Oh,
you would have thought that he would be going to a destination like Colorado, Nashville, Boston, teams that are contenders at the moment, but it just seemed like the Sabres finally went outside the box and tried to do something that was going to stand out from the pack. They offered him a one-year deal at $8 million with the uncertainty of what's going on with the NHL and just the world in general with the global pandemic. They were offering him the most money on a one-year, $8 million deal. He gets a chance to play with Jack Eichel, which that 3-on-3 line might be one of the top 3 lines in hockey just because of how fast Jack Eichel and Taylor Hall are, probably 2 of the top 5 skaters in all of the NHL. So that is going to be great to see. But not just that, just the fact that Ralph Kruger in his, cup of coffee with the Edmonton Oilers in that shortened season had that much of an impact on Taylor Hall, where Taylor Hall wanted to play for a guy like Ralph Kruger again. So I don't think that can be understated, the effect of Ralph Kruger being able to lure Taylor Hall back into a team that he was coaching. I think that was huge. And I just think in general, this is a perception changer for Buffalo, and like Taylor Hall mentioned in his press conference, when you look under the hood, there are a lot of things going on in Buffalo, and hopefully a move like this, if it works out, he signs a long-term deal. He's open to it. His parents live in Toronto, so if he can't play in Toronto, I guess it's the closest thing to Toronto to be playing closest to home, and it could keep, like you mentioned, your captain Jack Eichel wanting to be here long-term. You have shown him that you're willing to make moves like that when other teams weren't willing to take that kind of risk or commitment. It's just, there's a lot of good things going on with Kevin Adams right now, and I'm really liking the way that the Sabres regime is kind of attacking this free agency, and maybe there's a trade or two to be made with the D-Corps. That's remains to be seen, but I mean, what else can you say? The fact that the Sabres have basically flipped the switch on the perception of the entire NHL and fan bases around the league as to really Buffalo, why Buffalo, and Taylor Hall and Ralph Kruger have proved why somebody wants to play with somebody like Jack Eichel, and why Buffalo is a destination trying to look outside the box and trying to show that Buffalo is willing to be a contender after all those talks in the offseason about the internal cap, where the Pagula is willing to spend money. Well, there's your answer.
Yeah, I mean, you literally just hit every nail on the head. I can't even think of anything else to add to that because you just explained it so perfectly. It's a can't-lose situation for either side. It's a one-year commitment that could turn into more. If it flames out, it was 1 year. It's a very good signing for the Sabres to get that type of player, not only for their team, but like you said, for the perception of the market. Now Taylor Hall is in Buffalo. He's said he's open to a long-term deal. If things work out, that's good. Now all of a sudden, maybe things are starting to look up. Like, the top two lines in Buffalo now, potentially the top 9, are pretty deadly when you throw Taylor Hall into the mix. I mean, you now have the option to make Reinhart a third-line winger, which would just be amazing because Reinhart would dominate on a third line. It's just like you said, it's a perception changer. It actually infuses so much talent into this lineup, and now you're making Jack Eichel realize, okay, maybe it's not all doom and gloom here. The results need to come. Like, let's not stress that. They didn't do anything yet. The results still need to happen, but this is a pretty damn good start by Kevin Adams. Dropping
players into positions where they don't have to jump up and play in spots that they are not comfortable in, which is what we've been talking about for this team for years. You have, Marcus Johansson, great player, a good role player, was not a second-line center, was not a first-line winger, but guys like that were asked to play positions and play in areas that just they weren't going to be successful. Now you bring in a guy like Taylor Hall. You have a first line of Taylor Hall, Jack Eichel, and Victor Olofsson. That right there sounds dynamic as it can possibly be right there for a top NHL line, as long as Olofsson can stay healthy. A second line of Jeff Skinner, Eric Stahl, Sam Reinhart. That sounds great to me. And even in the third line, you have Cody Eakin. He can play with a guy like Dylan Cousins if he's ready to play. And what were we discussing in the offseason, Austin, about not rushing Dylan Cousins into a spot where he wouldn't be successful like they did with a Casey Middlestat. They rushed him in his first year to be a second-line center of this team, replacing Ryan O'Reilly, and we saw what that did for Casey Middlestat, and he's still trying to find his way. You have a guy like Dylan Cousins who will be that in the future, but you gotta start him off slow here and not put too much pressure on a guy like Dylan Cousins. So having him on a potentially third line with pros like Tobias Reeder and Cody Eakin, I think that's a great spot for Dylan Cousins to be able to develop and grow as an NHL player, having Eric Stahl, Jeff Skinner, Sam Reinhart as number 2 line. I can't be any more happier than what the Sabres have done with this offseason. You look at what the lines were as the last season ended going into this season. To me, it's night and day, and players playing in positions that they're actually going to succeed in.
Absolutely, and I'll throw a little bit of debate at you here. I would rather see Cousins play with Stahl and Skinner, and then I would make my third line Cody Eakin between Tage Thompson and Sam Reinhart. You tell me, though, that's a top 9 that can actually go up against pretty much anyone in the league.
Yeah, that's fair, but there's also Pozo, Gergensons, what's going on with those contracts, or, obviously injuries happen during the year. Maybe Tobias Reeder ends up, being a scratch forward and Tage Thompson becomes a third line, but there's a lot of moving parts there, but again, there's a lot of competition, Austin, and that's a good thing. We're not trying to throw AHL players because there's
Absolutely.
no depth on this
when
team.
you look at their contracts, though, no, there's no depth on this team. So you do there's depth now, but you do need that competition, like you said. But when you look at the contracts that were handed out, it's pretty clear that Lazzaro, Girgensons, and Oposo is probably that fourth line, which is pretty good because, let's face it, Oposo and Girgensons are very good at shutting down the opposing team's top players. So they have options now, which is what you need, and they have talent now, at least definitely talent in the top six at the bare minimum. So it's going to be some improvement. We'll see how much improvement actually comes next year, but it's hard to not be excited right now.
And again, it's not ideal that you have a fourth liner making $6 million like Kyle Oposo, but that's basically what he has become for this team at this point. Again, not a great signing by Tim Murray, all those years ago, but it is what it is. You got to work with him and what you got. He was productive in the bottom six last year, but again, there's a lot of moving parts with this lineup, but it's all going to be a great competition. We're finally going to see some maybe bottom six contributors for this roster, and guys that maybe were playing in the top six that should have belonged in the bottom six. Now they're getting that opportunity with players that have been brought in, like Eric Stahl and Taylor Hall, and Dylan Cousins, like you mentioned. He can even slide up to a second line winger role. There's a lot of moving parts here, but it's all positive in my opinion. There's a lot of competition going on and a lot of good players battling for jobs, as opposed to which AHL players are going to have to jump up and make that huge jump to the NHL. There might be 2 or 3 good players that aren't playing in this lineup that have to be moved elsewhere, or just are scratched, or get placed on waivers, because there is so much good competition finally from top to bottom on the Sabres roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, the moves that they've made have just put people in positions to play their proper roles, or to even play down a role, which in a perfect world is what you want. You would want your players to be able to play down a role, play down in the lineup when they're capable of playing a certain role. So they've done a very good job. I still think there hopefully is 1 or 2 more moves to be made. I mean, Olofsson and Reinhart and Ullmark all need salary or new contracts. They're all filed for arbitration. They have about $13 million in cap space, and I would think that once those contracts are signed, depending on how things go, you'll be pretty close to that cap limit. If the rumors of an internal cap were true, that means there's at least 1 more move coming. So we'll see how everything else shakes out. But for right now, it's impossible to not, be way more optimistic than we were a month ago.
And lastly, before we end the show today, Austin, there's obviously still a question mark in the crease with what the goaltender situation is going to be like. Linus Ullmark still needs a contract, like you just mentioned. Carter Hutton is also still there. Do you think that there might be another move coming for a goalie, maybe a veteran goalie that's still available, or a team that has 2 goalies and wants to, shed some cap space and get rid of one of them? Do you think the Sabres could take advantage of something like that? Obviously, an example would be if the Vegas Golden Knights were to move on from Marc-Andre Fleury, if they were to give the Sabres a draft pick and eat half the salary. That's something that I would be interested in, but I don't know if Vegas is going to go in that route. They've mentioned that they want to bring Fleury back with Robin Leonard. Don't know why they want to pay 2 goaltenders on $14 million, but they might just have to say that as far as negotiating tactics. But what do you think of the Sabres trying to bring in a goalie, maybe to replace Carter Hutton and to kind of help Linus Ullmark? And, we saw what Ullmark could do last year when he was playing. Do you think that the Sabres, obviously, as they wait for a couple of their prospect goalies to develop into hopeful starters for this team, what do you think that they might do for the rest of this offseason in the crease? Do you think that there might be a move coming there as well?
Just based off Ralph Kruger's comments from his media availability, he said, at the moment, Ullmark and Hutton are our goalies. He said, and if this is the way we go into the season, we're pretty happy with it. But when you hear the words "at the moment," it's not exactly a ringing endorsement. So I would assume that they're at least trying to work the phones to make some improvement in the crease. If it actually happens, we'll find out. But I would not be shocked if the Sabres, if they have any moves left, if it would not be for some kind of upgrading goal.
Mm-hmm. So we'll have to see. Would you be interested in possibly a Marc-Andre Fleury in that type of scenario where the Sabres get a draft pick to eat the salary for Marc-Andre Fleury and he comes in as a fringe starter for a year or 2 for this franchise?
Marc-Andre, if Marc-Andre Fleury would be available, and depending on what Vegas would throw in to sweeten that pot, I wouldn't be against it per se. But if I'm the Sabres, I'm looking at Columbus because they have two young goalies who have proven they can be pretty successful. I mean, let's face it, we know Linus Ullmark is pretty good, but I think his ceiling is probably 35 to 40 games. I don't think he could be a 55 to 60 game guy in the NHL. He needs some help. Obviously, Hutton hasn't been able to provide him that help. So, if all other moves are exhausted and Vegas is still trying to move on from Fleury, I wouldn't hate it, but I would probably look elsewhere at first, just to see.
But great start for the Sabres as far as the offseason goes. The draft, obviously, we started off slow, but I really like, what Jack Quinn brings to this team. Cody Eakin, Taylor Hall, Kevin Adams and this regime definitely going in the right direction here, it looks like, and they're definitely thinking in the positions that the Sabres have had desperate need in the last couple of years and what Jason Botterill just was not able to bring in. Do you think if Botterill's still the GM, do you think that any of these moves probably would have been taking place?
It's hard to say. I know the draft would have been completely different. I know their regime was a little bit higher on a guy like Marco Rossi. I can imagine they would still probably try and go after Taylor Hall, and I think Kruger was the main factor there. I don't think it was Kevin Adams because Kevin Adams obviously had to make the deal and do the thing, but I think the fact that they had Ralph Kruger here would have helped sway Hall no matter who was the GM, but I do think the draft would have been completely different if Botterill was here. But I also don't think that you get the signings of, let's face it, Botterill neglected the center position. I don't know if the center acquisitions happen if Botterill was here, the Stahl and the Eakin signing.
Absolutely. So great start here for the Sabres. We'll see how it transitions the rest of the offseason and going into the regular season whenever that starts for the NHL. But definitely getting 2 thumbs up for me for how it's transpired so far. And we'll be sure to come back with an episode if we have any more Sabres news and notable things to talk about on this show. But definitely a good start for free agency and the NHL draft. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Your source of North American sports coverage by sports fans for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the Niagara region. As always, I am one of your hosts of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, Brandon Caputo. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13 with a Canadian Z. As well, you can follow my co-host Austin Broad at Austin_Broad TCB. Austin, thanks so much for coming back on, and great job on your Charging Buffalo draft guide as well.
Thank you very much. It was always fun. Hopefully we have some news to come out and do another episode in the near future.
Absolutely. And hopefully the next time you will see our beautiful faces on this podcast as well as we transition and move up in the world to a video version. Big thank you to all of our great sponsors who help put us on and support the network. Keep the show on the air. Make sure you're checking them out and telling them the Armchair GM sent you. Use those promo codes. Support your local business at this time. It's very important. And finally, to you viewers out there for tuning in and listening along with us for this episode, once again, this is the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition on the Armchair GM Sports Network by sports fans for sports fans. We'll see you guys next time. Pre-order those Taylor Hall jerseys before they're sold out.
Absolutely, get on it.